Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast in partnership with Church Hub AI. Last week, we launched into a brand new series called The Formed Leader. I'm here with my good buddy from Church Hub AI, Mr. Rick Bulman. What's up, dude?
Hey, Mo. How are you? Doing well. Thank you.
I'm doing really well, brother. It's always good to chat with you. I get fired up about technology in the church, and sometimes it scares me. So these are really some therapeutic episodes for me. So
Good.
pastors, we want to know what you think. Are you loving AI? Is it tough for you? So, Rick, tell us what we're talking about today. What's the name of this episode?
We're going to be talking about formation rhythms, taking the rhythms of daily life and in our workspace, in our calling, in our ministry, and how do we form healthy rhythms so that we don't burn out, that life isn't chaotic, and we can just have some balance and joy in doing what we do.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit more about that. When I first read that formation rhythms,
Yeah.
work that out for me. What actually does that mean?
Well, when I say formation rhythm, I'm talking about consistent patterns in your life that shape who you are, not just what you produce. So formation rhythms are the repeated practices, if you will, that stabilize your inner world. They're not events, they're not a conference that gets you all excited. They're not some sort of emotional spike. They're truly daily, weekly, and monthly patterns that slowly build depth. And I would say, lastly, formation doesn't usually happen in intense moments. It actually happens through steady, repeated practice over time.
That makes me think of a book that I read back in like the early 2000s
Okay.
by John Ortberg called The Life You've Always Wanted. Do you remember that book? I mean,
Vaguely.
it's old school, right?
Yeah, very old school.
But, he talks about products and habits, and it's all about what we practice
Yeah.
consistently over
Yeah.
time. And so, leadership, ministry is not built on the one dramatic moment. I think that's kind of what you're saying. It's built on the ordinary repetition.
Yes.
So formation rhythms, the way that I see it, are really about creating patterns that fit how God wired you to be without letting your personality become an excuse. Am I on the right track?
Absolutely. Yeah, it is definitely creating habits and daily habits and sticking to them and do habit stacking where you're stacking one habit on another and you're building and you're just consistent in that. Our personalities are great. Our personalities serve us, but I think our personalities can also have us go rogue and we're all over the place. And so we don't have order. And when we live in that too long, we're just asking for it.
Yeah.
We are.
So then why do so many leaders struggle to maintain good rhythms?
It's because urgency always screams louder than intentionality.
Yeah.
I mean, leaders wake up with emails. They wake up and they glance at their phone and they see all these text messages and there's requests and there's problems and all of a sudden that produces some anxiety and I got to get up and you got to tackle it because it's starting to feel overwhelming and it's going to get ahead of you and get out of control for the day and it's going to disrupt what you got planned later on. So you instantly go into just damage control, sometimes. So formation rarely, if at all, feels urgent. Formation it's quiet, it's slow, and sometimes even feels inefficient. But I would say this, what feels inefficient short term is stabilizing long term. So the problem isn't that leaders don't value formation. It's that they let urgency crowd it out.
And you know what? I mean, leaders are rewarded for being reactive. Let's just be real.
Absolutely.
Most leaders feel important when they're busy. And since we're on John Ortberg, another one of his more recent books, it's called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And in that book, he attributes a quote from Dallas Willard, who we've talked about on this show.
Sure. Yeah.
And Dallas Willard said, hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life in our day.
Yeah.
I am just hurrying too much. Yeah. I try not to, but there's a difference between being productive and being formed. And I feel that's that's what we're talking about today. We
Yes.
want to be formed. We just don't want to be productive, because in leadership, the loudest thing usually wins. The squeaky wheel gets the oil, right?
Yes.
You just mentioned emails, text messages. There's always a fire to put out. They all feel urgent, but we got to slow down. And so, leaders, what is the one thing in your life that is screaming for your attention? The urgent
Mhm.
thing, as Rick had mentioned. We would love to hear your thoughts on that. Rick, that actually leads me to my next question, which is, okay, we know all that now. We got to slow down. We don't. So, what's the first rhythm that actually forms a leader long term so that we can start becoming more formed and not just productive?
Speaking as a pastor, speaking as a Christ follower, I would say that first rhythm that actually forms long term leadership, that first rhythm should be unhurried time with God. And I'm being specific when I say unhurried. I'm talking about not sermon prep when you're in your devotional time. When you're in your devotional time, quiet time with the Lord, it's not for content creation or scanning scripture for material or, ooh, that's really good. Let me do yeah. See, this is about time where you are not producing anything, you are receiving. Well, Rick, but what happens if I see something and it really fits for the congregation? Well, you know what? Just take it for yourself. And if the Lord really wants you to use it, he'll bring it back. He'll circle you back to it. Right now, this is about you and him. So
Yeah.
if you're only interacting with scripture for output, you're going to dry out. And so I would say formation begins when scripture reads you, not when you read it for others.
Man, I feel like you're spying on my alone time with God, because I'll do that,
This
Rick.
is my
I'll be
alone
in the
time. I'm
Bible.
guilty. I'm guilty all the time.
Man,
Yeah.
I'll be in
Yeah.
there and I'll think this would be great for the sermon I'm giving in 3 or 4 weeks.
Yep. Yep.
I'm not done with my God time, but I'm just going to write this down really fast.
Yeah.
And really,
Yeah.
I feel like God is trying to scream at me, look, Mo, stop producing, start receiving,
Well, let's
as you
think of it
mentioned.
Mo, let's think of it this way. Like if someone is with their spouse or significant other, or just even with a good friend, and every time you're talking to them, they go, "Oh, hold on for a second, I got an idea for work," and they interrupt. All right, go ahead. What were you saying? That's another good thing. You just reminded me. I need that for
Yeah,
work. Hold on, and then you put that. How would that other person feel? Like, are you just going to be with me? Or are you just going to cherry
yeah.
pick things I say so you can use it for? Like, it just people want you to be present with them and not be always sidetracked, and I wonder if God feels the same way.
Mhm. So then we're talking about all this.
Yeah.
What's different from a normal devotional life then?
Most devotional lives end up being rushed. I would say, we check the box, we read the chapter, we just move on to the next thing. But real formation doesn't usually happen in that kind of pace. It happens when you slow down, when you're willing to linger in the text, when you're willing to sit with the tension, let the conviction settle, and allow the silence to just do its work. And yes, silence is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for most people. It's uncomfortable for most leaders because especially in leadership, we're so used to producing and moving. But it's often in that quiet space that what's really going on the inside of us becomes clear.
Yeah, I tell a lot of leaders, look, sometimes we want to avoid the silence because silence exposes what's really happening under the
Yeah.
surface.
Yeah.
And if we're quiet long enough, it's going to start bringing in the things that we don't really want to connect with in our lives. But I think that's when God does some of the best work in our lives. And
Yeah.
some leaders, out there, you might be afraid of what you're going to hear when you slow down long enough. So
Yeah.
my prayer is that
Yeah.
pastors, they take heed to this and they say, what would it be like if I just slowed down? Because Rick, I'm with you. I was just looking this morning. Every Monday, I get a ton of devotionals that I've subscribed to over the years. I've got my favorite ones, and then I've got the ones that I sit down and read from actual books.
Yeah.
There's a couple dozen that I have at any given time.
Mm.
But I saw one this morning in my email and I thought, oh no, I have to get to that. And that's the wrong thing for me to think. I was thinking, oh gosh, I need to check that box. When in
Yeah.
reality, I probably just need to slow down. So man, I'm feeling convicted. So let's move on before
Okay.
before I have to sit in silence here and start
Yeah.
reckoning with all the stuff that I should be dealing with.
That's
So beyond personal prayer and scripture, what else is going to start building the lasting formation in the lives of pastors and anybody for that matter?
outside, or in addition to, I should say, a good devotional life that slows way down. I would say Sabbath. And when I say Sabbath, and we've talked a little bit about this in other episodes, I'm not just talking about a day off. I'm talking about a true Sabbath rhythm that interrupts your productivity cycle, because productivity is addictive. It is very addictive, especially in leadership. So, Sabbath, it reminds you this, that the church runs without you, and it forces surrender, and surrender forms you more than striving ever will.
And I love that. The Sabbath is hard because it feels unproductive. And that's the wrong thing to be
Yeah.
thinking.
Yep.
Because let's face it, leaders, a lot of us attach our worth to what we accomplish. And
Yeah.
Sabbath, if I hear you correctly, Rick, is a clear way to remind ourselves that we're not God. We are just, we're part of God's plan, and God can choose to use us or choose not to use us. And I'll tell you a funny story, a quick one from one of my mentors in the Army. When I first got in, he jokingly said to all of us, because we're a bunch of chaplains, a bunch of pastors in the Army.
Yeah.
So, of course, everybody thinks they're really important, right? It's just, imagine like 30 or 40 pastors getting together and
Yeah. Oh,
figuring
yeah.
out we're here to save the Army, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And
Yep.
our chaplain mentor who'd been in, he'd been to Iraq and Afghanistan, all these places, says, look, just remember this at the end of the day, pastors. And that's what he said, pastors. So we knew exactly where he was going. He
Yep.
said, you're now a GI Joe. Do you know what GI means? For all we were all little boys and
General
we used to play
enlisted,
GI
right?
Joe.
Yeah.
It means government issue. And
Government
don't
issue.
worry. Yeah, I mean, that was, for the sake of his story. He said, "Your government issue, and don't worry, when you're gone and you're retired and you're out of the Army and you're no longer with us or no longer with the Army, don't worry, the Army will issue another one." And
Mhm.
to hear that, I thought to myself, man, I'm not that important. I am part of this organization, the Army, and being a chaplain for a time. And
Mhm.
it doesn't matter when I leave because, like you said, Rick, life's going to move on.
Yeah.
And when we're gone from this earth and we are, up there in heaven with Jesus, um, life's going to go on unless Jesus comes back before then.
Yeah.
So I guess, for lack of a better way to say it, don't take yourself too seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we're all replaceable. We
Yeah.
are. I mean, you have these unfortunate fallen pastors in small churches and mega churches. And the reality is the ministry often moves on. It might look different, but we're all replaceable. But while we're here, let's faithfully steward our personal time and our time with the Lord so that we can steward the ministry that's in front of us for the time that He has us stewarding it, shepherding those people.
Yeah. So speaking of that, stewarding people, shepherding the flock for pastors out there, what about accountability? Where does that fit into formation rhythms?
This should be a non-negotiable. You cannot self-form in isolation. I mean, you could do some work, but no. You need someone who sees what I like to say behind the pulpit, someone who's going to ask you all the hard questions, who's going to challenge you, someone who notices patterns that you don't. I would say without accountability, leaders are going to drift ever so subtly, and drift rarely feels dramatic. So it's a very subtle, it's very gradual, and accountability helps prevent this gradual drift you may not notice on your own.
Yeah, leadership can get lonely really fast. I tell leaders
Yeah.
that all the time. The more influence that you have, the easier it is to stop being honest with the people that
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
supposed to be coaching and mentoring you. And so
Yeah.
that's why coaches and mentors have always been so important in my life. The men and women who could speak truth in my life and help me. And accountability really helps leaders to notice when strengths are becoming unhealthy.
Yeah.
And we don't really think about that. As leaders, we're always moving to the next thing, trying to get things done. So many people are looking to us to make sure that we get things done. But really, somebody just needs to stop and ask us sometimes, are you really okay? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
pastors, let me stop here and ask you, if nobody has in the past week, month, year, are you really okay? And,
Yeah.
Rick, that makes me think, how do leaders build rhythms that survive busy seasons? Because I'm telling you, there's a lot of busy seasons in leadership. And for pastors out
Mhm.
there, pastors always feel like they're in a busy season because it always is a busy season because there's
Yeah.
always hurting people. So how do leaders build those rhythms and get through those busy seasons?
Yeah, I would say good or aware leaders simplify. Most
Mhm.
leaders fail at formation because they overcomplicate it. They try to build elaborate systems, then the busy season hits, Easter. Wait, what's after Easter? Then we're entering into summer, and then, there's lots of nuances there. And then we've got fall, back to school, and there's always a new season, and the season hits, and then everything collapses because we built these systems. So I would say formation rhythms must be sustainable at your busiest. So if your rhythm only works when you're calm, then your rhythm is too fragile. Think of
Mm,
it like a short daily anchor. And I would say leaders and people need a weekly Sabbath boundary and a monthly reflection reset, be it a period of time during the day or a day or whatever. So you got your weekly Sabbath boundary and you have your monthly reflection reset. And you just do that consistently. And it's simple, it's repeatable, and it's durable.
and I love that. Pastors, we'd love to hear what your Sabbath entails. It obviously can't be Sunday because you're preaching and teaching and doing all
Yeah.
this stuff. It's probably not Saturday, maybe this, but if you've got a Saturday service, we always had a Saturday
Yeah.
service.
Yep.
And so you're working that day. So I mean, what day is it for you? When do you take time off to just do what Rick's saying, which is to just decide, look, I'm going to be simple and not impressive. I'm going to be durable. I'm not going to be dramatic. I'm just gonna do it, and I'm going
Yep.
to take that time
Yep.
within this use of Sabbath and making sure that we're spending the right time with God and building rhythms.
Mhm.
How does technology help or hurt these rhythms, and how do we deal with that?
Technology actually does both. It can help and hurt rhythms. Technology can fragment your attention or it can protect your margin. So if you let technology dictate your morning, formation's going to lose. If you are intentionally using tools to eliminate administrative clutter, that's where you create space for formation. So I would say the key is order. Seek first depth, then use tools to protect it. Never, never, ever reverse that order.
Mhm. Yeah, I guess really, in our talks together, and you're kind of the AI guru when it comes to, ministry and helping
Yeah.
pastors to understand that through Church Hub AI. What I continually hear from you and just reinforced in my own mind is that the key is making sure that technology serves formation and doesn't replace it, and
Yes.
that tools remain a servant because they're terrible masters. Am I getting it right?
Yeah, yeah, they're horrible masters. They can make great servants. The problem is that when you surrender servanthood to a tool to become your master, now you're serving technology versus technology serving you. And it's just a matter of time where you're going to hit a wall and things are going to unravel.
So let's say pastors take heed to all this that we're
Mhm.
talking about, everything that we've been saying in the past several eepisodes. What are the signs that a leader's rhythms are actually working, that they're doing it right? They're
Yeah.
starting to get on the right path.
Yeah, well, the leader will actually start to notice stability under pressure. Their reactions slow down, they become less defensive. They'll find that they have more clarity, more peace in their decision making. Formation shows up less. We need to remember this is that it shows up less in how you perform and more in how you respond. So if you find yourself reacting differently, you're not as defensive. You have more clarity, more peace in your decision making. Those are really good signs. But if your stress level is constantly maxed out, that's usually a sign that something underneath needs strengthening.
Yeah, and that really was my last question, which is what about somebody who's listening and they feel behind in this area? Where do they start?
We've said this in other episodes, start small. Don't try to overhaul your entire life tomorrow because I'll do that. I will literally go, okay, what can I change? And I'll make a list and then I'll create a system to implement everything. Now I'm overwhelmed by all of that. So
Yeah.
it's because we're about action and not just taking the slow road. We've got to take the stairs on this, not the elevator. So I would say this: choose one rhythm you can realistically sustain. And, maybe it's protecting 20 unhurried minutes each day. Simple as that.
Yeah.
If your Sabbath is just falling by the wayside, start there. Commit to one genuine Sabbath window each week. If depending on your life, when I had young kids, sometimes my Sabbath was on a Monday after a Sunday service. But then as kids got older and schedules changed, I flipped it to Friday. And I found
Yeah.
that Monday served me better in that season as a work day, but I would be intentional on a Friday. And then Saturday would be a lighter day. So I kind of had my full day Friday and then some time off on Saturday, but getting ramped up for Sunday. So start there. Another thing you could do is, how about this? Because we talked about it, scheduling one honest accountability conversation. And the key word is honest
Mm,
accountability.
yeah.
Find that trusted person. And you know what? If you don't have them, maybe your first step is start praying that God would give you eyes to see and who that can be. That may be your first step. So, bottom line is that formation is going to take time, and leaders who build patterns they can faithfully repeat over the long haul typically have longevity and a healthy ministry work life balance.
Yeah. Leaders often fail because they're just trying to do too much too fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Rick, what I hear you saying is small is not weak, small is sustainable. So start small. Darren Hardy has a book called The Compound Effect, and he talks about that specific issue. He says, look, make the small choices, make them repeatedly, be consistent, and over time, you're going to see massive results. In other words, we've all heard, somebody has probably said to us in our lives, I know my mentors and coaches have told me over the years, Mo, how do you eat an elephant?
Yeah.
One bite at a time. So remember, you want to be a formed leader.
Yeah.
If today helped you, make sure you send this. Share it with another leader who needs to hear it. Also, like and subscribe. It helps us for our algorithm and helps us put more content out like this. Rick, as always, great conversation, and can't wait to talk to you next week about burnout. Thanks a lot, brother.
All right. Have a good day, Mo. Thank you.
All right, you too.